Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and today I want to bring you guys sort of a Shadowlands pre-patch Warlock discussion slash deep dive video of sorts. Now, I am going to be making guides for Affliction, Demonology, and Destruction in pre-patch. However, those are probably going to be coming in about a week, depending on whenever we get a pre-patch date, and hopefully another PTR build. In this video, I want to talk about talents, I guess spells, abilities, what's changed for each spec, and how essences look. Maybe some have gained some value, some have lost some value, and also Azerite traits, because there are some pretty interesting interactions between some AF ones with new talents, some spicy Destro ones, and, well, I mean, there's also Demonology, and, well, we'll get to all that. So, any Weak Wars profiles add-ons you see here are available to you for free on my Twitch. If you want to swing by, grab them, drop a follow, ask any questions, hang out anytime. Feel free to do so. Now, once again, I want to reiterate, this video is sort of going to be a bit off the cusp, just talking about abilities, looking at a few different builds. It's sort of supposed to be a fun video before pre-patch hits. We'll have the more in-depth spec guides, all that coming out with the actual sims, the builds I'm looking at playing, and what sims best, hopefully in a week or so. But until then, hopefully you guys can enjoy this video and check out some spicy builds. By the way, I cast Rain of Fire 16 times in a row. No other spells in between then, later on this video. Destro looks pretty good, FYI. Let's get into it and start off with Affliction. So getting into Affliction here, Affliction is a spec that's received the most changes in Shadowlands, whether it's pre-patch or the actual expansion launch. The main change being Unstable Affliction no longer costs a Soul Shard, nor does it bring with it the 10% damage amp that it used to, similar to how what Haunt does. They've changed the actual duration of Unstable Affliction. It is 16 seconds baseline, which is further improved to, I believe, 21 at level 56. It's a long dot. It's sort of your long-term maintenance dot that deals a decent bit of damage. You just sort of set it and refresh it every once in a while. The cool thing is, with this not costing a Soul Shard anymore, you're able to juggle it in Mythic Plus or in certain settings if you're trying to get a few shards back, because they did leave the shard generation clause on it. Generates one shard if the target dies while affected by Unstable Affliction. So at times in Mythic Plus, if a mob is your priority mob and you're trying to burn it down quickly, you'll put your UA on it. This is also limited to one, by the way. I'm sorry. You can only have one UA active at a time on any number of targets. Only one total. So in Mythic Plus, a good bit of the time, you'll put your Unstable Affliction, for example, on a target, and once that a priority target, and once that one dies early, you'll get a shard back from that, and then a shard from Drain Soul, if you're actually playing the talent. Then you can move your Unstable Affliction to another mob, maybe Rapture once or twice, use some of those shards, and just keep it going and going. Depending on what you're doing, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but it's a solid change regardless. So, you might be wondering what we spend our shards on. Malefic Rapture is the new soul shard spender for Affliction. Your damaging periodic effects erupt on all targets, causing 203 shadow damage per effect. Now, in a build about a month and a half ago, Malefic Rapture was indeed added to our mastery, so it scales with our mastery percent and also has a baseline amount of damage that it deals before mastery affects it. So basically what this means is you're going to deal 203 damage to a target if you have only Agony on it. You're going to deal 406 to a target if you have Agony and Siphon Life on it, and it just goes from there. So there's a difference here, obviously, between UA and Rapture. One being Unstable Affliction. Its duration, depending on your haste levels and things on live, you had to wait for it to essentially expire to get all the damage out of that shard, out of that one Unstable Affliction. Rapture hits every target that has dots on it. So if you're in Mythic Plus pulling a pack of 5, you're not having to essentially spread your Unstable Afflictions to 4 or 5 mobs, to get value out of your shards and that damage amp. All you're doing is having to get your dots rolling and get your one free UA up and then Rapture. You're not waiting, 5-6 seconds for your UAs to expire. At times the mobs might die early, at times it's just not worth casting it because how fast they die. Rapture helps shore up Affliction's damage a lot in Mythic Plus, in AoE spots, even in raiding. Once you get your dots rolling, you start spending shards, and you get all of that damage through each Rapture cast. Rapture doesn't deal damage over 5 seconds, it's instant. Bam. So, cast your Seed, get your Agonies rolling, Vile Tank, get your 1 UA up, and just start Rapturing. It really helps make up a lot of, I guess you can say, lost ground. You can sort of call it that, depending on, group comp and things like that. Affliction's toolkit in Mythic Plus and AoE has certainly been improved. And as far as single target damage goes, Rapture is still impactful. It's your main soul shard spender, and when Shadowlands comes around, actually launches, we have a plethora of conduits and different abilities that further increase Rapture's damage single target wise. Getting into some talents here. I'm going to go over the larger talent changes for the most part. There have been a lot of small buffs or nerfs to like spell power modifiers. We'll mostly get into that later on in the spec guides. But Nightfall. So they have changed the way Nightfall works. Nightfall in BFA at this point does not scale having multiple corruptions active. However, it does in Shadowlands, which means it will in pre-patch. At this current point in time in BFA, if you have one corruption active on one target, you have the same chance for Nightfall to proc as you do having 1 million corruptions active. That changes in pre-patch. Now, there is a DR. I don't know the actual numbers on it, but you can feel it. It's impactful. To that same extent, Nightfall, this is an undocumented change that happened a couple weeks ago. Nightfall now stacks to 2, so you can bank essentially 2 free instant cast Shadow Bolts if you're playing Nightfall. It's nice, and hey, with its scaling and getting more procs with more targets, probably need it. Inevitable Demise is now a talent. It has essentially replaced Deathbolt in the first row, and Deathbolt has moved to a PvP talent. ID. Damaging enemy with Agony increases the damage of your next drain life by 15%. This effect stacks up to 50 times. It's very similar to the Azerite trait that we have right here. There you go. Now, the difference here is that the Azerite trait increases the actual damage of your drain life by X. There's a numerical value here, by 10. Looking at this, it increases it by a percentage, so there's a bit of a difference there. I will say ID is pretty undertuned on beta right now. And that's also, you know, Drain Soul is really good as well, due to Necrolord and other things. But regardless, we'll get into the Azerite trait interactions between this actual talent and ID here in a little bit, but it's certainly something to keep your eye on, depending on where it ends up being tuning-wise and if it actually works. Drain Soul is still here, obviously. No real changes. Most of Drain Soul's power lies in Necrolord, Decimating Bolt, Shadowlands Legendaries, which we won't really have in pre-patch. It's still good. In the first row here, I haven't really run the math on it as of yet, but I wanted to give you guys just an overall heads-up update on, you know, these talents have changed. We'll get into all this when the actual spec guides come out in a week or so, depending on Shadowlands launch. Writhe and Agony has been changed. Agony's damage starts at 4 and may now ramp to 18 stacks, which is different from 15, which we currently have in BFA. Absolute Corruption is the same. Siphon Life is essentially the same here. For the most part, I mean, I've still been playing Siphon Life for my single target dot here. The tuning has been changed on dots a bit, like I said. They've messed with Agony, I believe, Corruption, spell power modifiers. The big thing here when it comes to single target damage and just damage in general. Some fights, you know, 2-target fights, you end up playing Siphon Life regardless if you can manage the dots. Siphon Life's damage is impactful, but it's also another dot that counts toward Rapture's damage count. So tuning-wise, there's a lot to take into account there. We have to see where that goes. Demon Skin, Burning Rush are the same. Dark Pact has actually had the spell power modifier changed by a good bit. It's a pretty substantial effect. Let me see here. Can I see my shield? I have 21,000 health. I pop Dark Pact. I have basically a shield for half my life. It's pretty big. The damage here, or the actual like spell power modifier buff is really, really big. And seeing as how I think Dark Pact is underplayed in a lot of settings in the first place, pretty solid. If Burning Rush is not an option, because Burning Rush is still insane. Sow the Seeds, Phantom Singularity, and Vile Taint. Sow the Seeds was changed recently, spell power modifier wise. My honest opinion is that at this current point in time, it's just not really worth using over Singularity and Vile Taint. Singularity is more of a single target build. Vile Taint, I play more with a plus, or fights where ad spawn around our Vile Taint, I guess, window every 20 seconds or so. Vile Taint applies a dot to every single mob that it hits, which deals damage over time and also gives you an extra dot for Rapture, whether it's single target or more so AoE. Singularity will pulse on mobs, but it's really only one dot on one mob. Regardless, though, just seeing how similar Seed of Corruption with Sow the Seeds is to Rapture, and how it still costs a shard, and performance-wise, from what we've seen on beta, I'm just not a big fan of Sow the Seeds. So Vile Taint is still strong in plus, and is even stronger now, in a sense, with Malefic Rapture. 40 row here, Dark Fury, Mortal Coil, Howl of Terror. Howl of Terror has replaced Demonic Circle. For the most part, I've just played Mortal Coil. A 20% heal on a 45-second cooldown and a 3-second ink cap is actually pretty good. The heal has been relevant. It's sort of like a 4th health stone, in a sense, every 45 seconds. It's been pretty good. I've been a big fan. 45 row, Dark Caller, Haunt, Grimoire Sacrifice. I believe Sac was buffed in early alpha. It's still not worth using, in my opinion. Haunt is the same duration, same damage amp, all of that. If the target dies, Haunt's cooldown is reset. the main thing we have here is Dark Caller. Shadow's Embrace is gone in this row, which has been replaced by Dark Caller. Reduces Summon Darkler's cooldown by 60 seconds. So this gives you a 2-minute Dark Lair profile to sort of sync with your Dark Soul Misery if you're playing it, or just a shorter CD in Mythic Plus for Dark Lair as a whole. Now, Dark Lair is not really strong in Plus. It's the weakest of our 3 CDs anyways, being Infernal, Tyrant, and Dark Lair. But it's still something. And while Haunt is, I feel, a bit better single target-wise, having this damage profile every 2 minutes is strong. And if you're able to use it on large pulls and pull around it in a sense, it brings a lot of extra value. So, final row, Soul Conduit, Creeping Death, Dark Soul Misery. Basically, everything is the same here. As far as Soul Conduit goes, it has gained a bit of value because, you know, you're not actually, like, Rapture hits every target with dots on it, and if you're in a single target fight, you can only roll 5 UAs for the most part in your Dark Lair window. If you had a lot of, like, haste procs, if you had a lot of shard gen, you can roll as many Raptures as you want for the most part. Now, you do sort of hold them for your Singularity window every 45 or so seconds, or whenever you're casting Vile Taint, but for the most part, it's gain value. As far as like being better than Dark Soul, I don't necessarily think so, but we're still waiting on Sims to see where that all is. And once again, we'll be covering that in the Affliction guide coming up within the next week and a half or so. So the build that I've been playing for the most part in beta has been essentially this in Mythic Plus, playing Drain Soul, Absolute Corruption, Vile Taint, Dark Caller, and Dark Soul Misery. Now, as far as pre-patch goes, remember, we don't have any kind of Covenant abilities, we don't have new legendary effects, so Drain Soul is not as strong raw damage-wise, but the Shard Sniping effect is still very strong, and depending on how ID ends up being Azerite trait-wise and, I guess, talent-wise, Drain Soul, I feel, is probably still the best play here. Numerically, Nightfall and ID could be a bit better. That's more or less just a sim thing. I haven't messed with that a whole lot as yet, but this is the build I've looked at in Mythic Plus. Second row, Writhe and Agony, Absolute Corruption. I will say, Sudden Onset is still around as an Azerite trait, and Azerite is not going away in pre-patch, only Corruption is. So having that extra Sudden Onset damage amp with Writhe and Agony stacking 3 stacks higher to 18 instead of 15, I've already enjoyed playing Writhe more over Absolute Corruption in Plus in the last, I guess, 2 patches of BFA. I wouldn't be surprised in pre-patch if you're playing AF in Mythic Plus to see a shift to Writhe and Agony over AC, but in the end, I think both are fine. 35 row, Vile Taint over Singularity over So. I feel Vile Taint once again provides another dot for Rapture fueling, more dots on more mobs, more damage. The slow is actually relevant too, in a sense, even though you don't really think of it a whole lot. It does have some usefulness on certain pulls. 45 row, Dark Caller, Haunt, or Grimoire of Sacrifice. Syncing your Dark Soul with your Dark Glare with your Dark Soul, just having a shorter CD on it does make a bit more of a difference than it might seem in Plus, even without there being, you know, even without Dark Lair being anywhere near as strong as your Tyrant or your Infernal especially, it's still a good call. And like I said, syncing with Dark Soul, being my pick in this row here, gives you a pretty strong damage profile in Mythic Plus as a Warlock. With the new Rapture spam, with the 2-minute Dark Lair, you're in a pretty good spot, I feel. As far as single target talents go, this is the build that I'm looking at starting off with, playing Drain Soul, Siphon Life, Singularity, Haunt, and Dark Soul Misery. Now, yes, Dark Caller is strong, however, when it comes to single target bosses, we do have a few weeks of pre-patch, probably still raiding in Nilotha and all that stuff. I do feel that Haunt is still the better choice single target. Remember that Corruption is going away, however, Essences aren't. You're still going to have Condensed Life Force, still have Blood of the Enemy, and I guess technically Dark Caller does give you a 2-minute Blood of the Enemy build with Dark Soul and things, without actually having to play a weird Dreadful Calling trait or a VOP minor essence, things like that. But for the most part, this is where I'm going to be looking to start. Now, one thing that I did not mention, I did say that Dark Caller replaced Shadow's Embrace, and then it went baseline. However, Shadow's Embrace is not a thing until level 58. It is a passive talent or an ability, but you don't learn it until level 58. So you don't have that 9% damage amp in pre-patch. Also keep in mind that they removed the damage amp on Unstable Affliction, so you're losing out on that 10% from Haunt. Well, you'll have the 10% from Haunt, but you're losing out on the 10% from Unstable Affliction, so you might see certain damage-based effects if you're looking at essences, say, like, I don't know, if you're, depending on what you have available, whether it's like Breath of the Dying, or Crucible of Flame, or Protocol, depending what you're doing, maybe fall a bit in overall sims damage-wise, because those amplifications do affect those. 10% might not seem like a whole lot, but there are a lot of relatively close choices, so for the most part, I do still feel that probably Condensed Life Force is going to be your major, or unless you're playing the Blood of the Enemy build when it comes to rating. I will say, though, Lucid Dreams, I feel, does gain a decent bit of value as far as AF is concerned, single target-wise, even when it comes to Mythic Plus. Like, having the extra shard generation means more Raptures. And more Raptures, you're not waiting for that damage to be dealt off that extra shard for 8 seconds from Unstable Affliction. You're casting more Raptures. You're getting that instant reward. So I feel Lucid does gain a whole lot of value. I don't think it's worth playing the major, obviously, but I think the minor will probably end up seeing some play to some extent, whether it's in Mythic Plus or rating, or potentially both, as far as pre-patch is concerned. So one of the reasons I wanted to make this video and just show you guys how Warlock feels on PTR right now, number one is because we still don't have a pre-patch announcement, and that could change things based off of what kind of Azerite traits you're running. At this point, not everything is working. I don't want to start rolling those guides out, looking at single target builds, AoE builds, like to a T, because we don't have Sims, also because there's no pre-patch date. I'm sort of hoping we're going to get one more build fixing things. When it comes to actual Affliction Azerite, there are 2 traits that I've mentioned, one being Inevitable Demise, and the other being Cascading Calamity. Both are in an odd spot, because Unstable Affliction doesn't stack anymore. However, the wording on Cascading Calamity implies that for the most part, you should still be able to get the proc of Cascading Calamity. Casting Unstable Affliction on a target affected by your Unstable Affliction increases your haste by X for 15 seconds. So, now, Cascading Calamity, Unstable Affliction, at this point lasts 16 seconds. So, I mean, there's about a second or so of downtime there if the trait ended up working. But hey, you want to clip the trait anyway. So, this should essentially give you, like, as long as everything goes according to plan, a pretty strong uptime on Cascading Calamity without any real downside here. The unfortunate part, though, is that if I roll Unstable Affliction on this target here, we'll give it a little while here. Once again, no shard cost, as you can see. If I cast another Cascading Calamity, watch for my buffs here, watch for my haste. My haste went up a little bit because we procced some kind of... Oh, we procced a higher stack of Focus Energy, Iris. There's no Cascading Calamity proc here. You can see I'll spam over and over. So Cascading Calamity, number one, is not working. The wording on it does indeed apply that it should work, and for the most part, there's nothing egregious going on here. It's not like it's, you know, incredibly OP or anything. It's just a haste buff similar to what we have on live right now. It might be a bit easier to manage because UA doesn't cost a shard anymore, but this is the first oversight, or I guess potential oversight, that I'm hoping is fixed before it goes live. This trait working would be strong. It'd be good for Affliction, and seeing as how strong Destro is in pre-patch with Reign of Chaos anyways, which we'll get to in a little bit here, let's just say I cast 16 Reign of Fires in a row later on in the video. I hope they end up fixing this trait, because it's just, without it, you know, it's one of Affliction's best traits. The second trait that I want to look at here as well is Inevitable Demise. Now, I have to break off my combat log here, but that's fine. I can show you this. So, number one, taking IED means you don't have Drain Soul anymore. Now, depending on tuning, I still feel that Drain Soul is probably going to be your best choice overall for pre-patch, but depending on tuning, I could be wrong. Regardless, to show, we have an IED chest on. So let's go back to Drain Soul here. I'll put an Agony up in this target. And you see we're getting ID stacks here. And each time your Drain Life deals damage, it deals X additional damage. There's no damage amp percent on here. It's a raw damage increase. This is from the Azerite trait, which gives you that raw damage increase. The talent gives you a percent damage increase. So we're going to get to a max stack of 50 here. Let's get a few Agonies rolling. And then we'll cast Drain Life. And we'll see how hard the Drain Life actually hits with one stack of ID on our gear. We're getting pretty close. We're at 50. Okay, let's Drain. We'll scroll back in the combat log. We have 10 Agonies rolling. Drain Life dealt roughly 833 shadow damage, 1,666 KEKW Warlock when it crit. So we'll drop combat here. We'll take Inevitable Demise, the actual talent. Look here already. There are 2 separate iterations of Inevitable Demise. There's one which has the bonus damage, which is from your actual gear, the Azerite trait, and this is the talent that deals extra percent damage. So naturally, what one would think is that you get the baseline damage increase from your Azerite, and then you get the percent damage increase from the talent. They're both at, well, we'll wait for this to get the max stacks here too, and then we'll cast Drain Life again and look at the damage. We're pretty close. Basically, here, 1 UA, 1 more. Let's do this. 50 and 50. Drain life. This is the new visual for Drain life, the talent too. It's pretty cool. Drain life. Drain life dealt 966 shadow damage. It's probably due to random procs here. What did I have rolling? I had a few procs active. Oh, I guess Strife is rolling and things too. What I'm getting at here is the effects don't stack. Each one works independently of one another, but it looks like you're just getting one of the damage amps here when you dump an ID, which is really unfortunate because I was hoping for there to be a large, maybe triple ID Azerite build with the talent, giving you some incredibly strong drain life cast. Like I said, it does indeed appear... Can I drop combat here? Actually, let's see. It does indeed appear that you're only getting... Is there ID on this? There is. Let's see if we can actually roll a trait here and see. Let's see if we can tell if it's the actual talent or the Azerite trait. I wasn't planning on doing this, but let's see. We'll have 2 stacks of ID, and we'll go back to Drain Soul here. We're looking at ID and ID. Let's stack to 50 and see which one's overriding which when it comes to having both the talent and the actual Azerite trait. Scroll back in our combat log. We'll hit a max stack here, and then we'll drain. The first drain we had here was for about 850 or so. Let's just check how much this drains for. First of all, drain at 2 stacks of ID. It's hitting for about 1300 shadow damage, about 1250 give or take. So let's swap to the talent and stack this again to full, and then see what's going on. If we see a number around like 850 to 950, we know that the talent is overriding the Azerite trait. And if we see one around like 12 to 1400, we know that the Azerite trait is overriding the actual talent. Or that's what's most likely going on. We'll wait for my cloak proc to go away. I'll actually cancel it, and let's drain. It's dealing 963. So what appears to be happening is the inevitable demise talent is overriding the inevitable demise damage on your Azerite here, which is unfortunate. I was hoping we'd actually have a big 3 racking 3 ID build playing the talent, but I guess it's just the world we live in. If they end up fixing Cascading Calamity and or Inevitable Demise, that could really change the builds that we end up running in pre-patch for Affliction. But at this point, if the traits stay the same and they're both dead, while we might not have Corruption anymore, we still have Azerite, we still have Essences, and with some of our best Azerite traits being dead, not really sure what's going to happen with Affliction in pre-patch. When we're talking Demonology in pre-patch, I have to say not a whole lot has really changed. There have been a few things talent-wise, but ability-wise, you're still pretty much working with a very similar build of Demonology as what we have on live right now. In the first row, Dreadlash, Bomber, Demonic Strength. Demonic Strength and Bomber swap spots here, but it's the same thing pretty much across the board. Demonic Calling, Power Siphon, Doom. There was a change to Power Siphon. It does deal extra damage now. Your Demon Bolts do. This only corresponds to the Demon Bolts that you sacrifice 2 imps on, and the game does separate those procs from like generic Demonic Core procs, from like Called Dreadstalkers expiring or imps expiring or whatever. It is a buff. In the end, Demonic Calling is also changed to make your Dreadstalkers cost 2 fewer soul shards, essentially meaning they cost 0. They still have no cast time. It's been one of the biggest issues going between beta and live for raiding on live and then back to beta, thinking that my Called Dreadstalkers cost 0 shards. Oh, I'm on live. They still cost 1 when calling procs. It's very similar to, it's similar to, I guess you can make a case of Recurrent Ritual in Legion. The unfortunate part is that we don't get shards refunded to us, but making it free, it actually has been pretty big in a lot of spots. A good bit of the time also setting up tyrants for demonic consumption, knowing that it's going to be free versus having to spend 1 shard or 2 shards. It's been good. From the Shadows was changed to now have Dreadbite cost a target to take 20% additional Shadow Flame damage. It's something, but the Dogs build that we've talked about a lot on beta doesn't emerge until you actually get the Dog Conduit in Shadowlands. Vile Fiend, Soul Strike, same thing. Same thing here. Once again, Howl of Terror in place of Demonic Circle. It's baseline. My pick here for the most part has just been Coil. The extra heal is just too strong. Soul Conduit, Demons, and Grimoire, Felguard. Now, not a whole lot has changed here. I believe they buffed the actual, I think, spell power modifier or attack damage. They buff inner demons, the demons that you spawn, by I believe 21% or so. In the end, I still feel that Grimoire Felguard through testing is a bit better when it comes to the new demonic consumption. but we'll see where that goes long term when we get closer to beta and I guess Shadowlands launch and into pre-patch. Final thing here, we have Sack Souls, Demonic Consumption, Nether Portal. Similarly to the Inner Demons, they did buff Nether Portal's damage by, I believe, 21% or so. However, the big change here revolves around Demonic Consumption. So your Demonic Commander now drains 15% of the life from the demons that you summon, or you have summoned, I suppose. He doesn't actually consume imps. He doesn't consume anything, number one. And number two, it's more than just imps now. It's not just, okay, well, I'm going to work my absolute hardest to LOS every single imp and not care about my dogs or my Grimoire Felguard or anything else. He siphons health from every pet that you have. And the fact that he does not consume anything when he's summoned means that those imps you have out, those dogs you have out, I guess the dogs were out in the first place, those imps you have out, you can use them for an implosion because explosive potential is still an Azerite trait. It's still a thing in pre-patch, even though it's a different version of consumption. It's still there, it's still good, and it has fueled some really, really big implosions in beta. Because, like I said, you have a wave of 18, 21 imps. You have 5 shards coming in. Baleful Invocation is also still a trait in pre-patch. Now that brings me to another, I guess, topic here. Summon Demonic Tyrant. They've given us Baleful Invocation in Shadowlands as a baseline ability. It's baked into your Tyrant. However, you don't have that ability until level 58. Now, it doesn't really make a difference, like I said, because we still have Baleful on live, and you don't get the actual damage amp to Demon Fire in Shadowlands. You just get the 5 shards. The 5 shards were the more relevant part, I feel. I mean, yes, the Demon Fire damage was nice, obviously, but having the 5 shards back whenever you cast your Tyrant just makes the spec feel so much more fluent. It really just helps rotational fluidity, everything. So there's no weird overlap there, unfortunately, with Baleful Invocation or anything of the sort. I will say at 56, you get a reduced cast time on your Imp's Fell Firebolt cast, which is nice. And at level 54, rank 2, your Dreadstalkers essentially jump to the target faster. But once again, these all won't be available until you start leveling in Shadowlands. But for the most part, like I've said, Demonology hasn't really changed a whole lot. Looking at Mythic Plus builds, what I've been running for the most part on beta has consisted of either Demonic Strength or Bioscourge Bombers for not playing the dog build, and seeing as how we don't have access to the dog conduit, we're going to skip that for now. Demonic Strength or Bombers, I'm leaning towards Strength still at this point. I've actually played a good bit with Summon Vile Fiend and Grimoire Felguard. We've shifted away from Soul Strike and Soul Conduit, mainly being because Demonic Consumption revolves around having different pets out. It's not just Imp energy anymore. At this point, Imp energy doesn't matter in the slightest. It doesn't matter if your imps have 1 cast left or 5 casts left. As long as they're active and they have health, you're going to siphon that health. So the same goes for your Grimoire Felguard, your Summon Vile Fiend. They both have a large health pool, which gives more power to your Demonic Tyrant. And seeing as how we do still have Vision of Perfection as a major essence on live, you still have a 1-minute Tyrant. I think it's a 1-minute 8-second Tyrant or so. You still have it on live. So power level wise, Demonic Consumption feels stronger. It feels better. It was nerfed, I believe, a month ago or so on beta because it was incredibly strong. Even post-nerfs, your damage inside Demonic Consumption when you have your Tyrant active is incredibly impactful. And the fact that it doesn't suck up all your imps anymore gives you even more damage in that window. Grimoire Felguard is a 2-minute CD. Your Tyrant's about 1 minute on live now, so honestly, in pre-patch, Demo's probably going to feel better than it does on beta or when Shadowlands launches because, hey, 1 minute cooldown, 2-minute cooldown, sync every other one. It's fine. Your Vile Fiend might be 45 seconds, but still, at that point, it's worth it, health-wise. Demonology just felt very good in Plus. Destro and Aff are also good in beta right now, but Demo, I think, is a bit of an underdog at this point. It's being undervalued at the same time, though. I still think it's honestly in a pretty good spot. I also feel that the World Vein build is still where you want to be. Now, I will say that, like, once again, VOP is still around, so Demonic Consumption, you have a very powerful CD window. You still line up your Strength, still line up your probably Vile Fiend and everything else, but I do still feel as a whole the World Vein build is where you're going to want to be. You're still playing Lucid anyways. For the most part, is Demo. You're playing Lucid, so not much else really changes there, numerically or essence-wise, but I think Demo's positioned pretty well to be pretty strong in pre-patch. I think it might be a sleeper, but then again, Destro also looked pretty good. So let's talk a little bit about Destro here. So when it comes to destruction, there's been a handful of changes to it. It sort of seems like Aff has gotten a pretty big rework. Demonology really hasn't gotten a whole lot, and destruction's gotten a bit of work. But I can say for the most part, it's similar to Destro that we've had on live for a long time, but the few talent changes and just changes they've made to certain abilities, like Havoc, like getting rid of Supremacy for Reign of Chaos, have made the spec feel so much better. I can say that in a Reign of Chaos window, which we'll get to in a few minutes here, in Mythic Plus, the spec just feels really, really, really fun. It's an absolute blast to play. So, I do want to talk about these three abilities here really quickly. Number one, they have indeed increased Havoc's duration by 2 seconds in Shadowlands. You're not going to have this in pre-patch. It requires level 54. It would be nice because of rolling Havoc being a thing, but let's be real here. For the most part, you're getting it 10 stacks pretty easily in a rolling Havoc window. Keep in mind that Corruption is going away in pre-patch also, like I said, so you will have less haste, but honestly, even before Expedient became a thing, it wasn't that hard getting 9-10 stacks of rolling Havoc when you had Flashpoint active on multiple targets. 56, I'm sorry. Rain of Fire deals 10% additional damage, so this is actually sort of big because the Rain of Chaos, Rain of Fire, Inferno build, all of that, for the most part, you'll see here in a minute or two when we get into it, revolves around a lot of Rain of Fire spam. However, with how many shards you have and what spending shards does for you with Rain of Chaos, if you've seen it all on stream or in other videos I put out, the build is still incredibly strong, although having this ability would be nice because of its increased additional damage by taking the Inferno talent. And finally here you have Summon Infernal at 58 with Infernal Awakening. Your Infernal Awakening deals 100% additional damage at impact. Honestly, they nerfed your Rain of Chaos Infernals don't really deal impact damage anymore. This is sort of irrelevant ability at this point. So the more impactful ones, 56, Rain of Fire rank 2, Havoc rank 2 at 54, but like I said, for the most part, the build outside of that's still incredibly fun. First row here, Flashover, Eradication are the same. Soulfire has been reworked. It is a 45-second cooldown, a 3-second cast, burns the enemy's soul, dealing 3,000 fire damage and applying Immolate. Generates 1 soul shard. Now, if I go over here, you can indeed Havoc a Soulfire. Watch my shards as well. You can Havoc a Soulfire, you get 2 shards, and you get Immolate on both targets here. Now, I'll admit, it used to apply or give you like an instant cast of Incinerate, similar to the Chaotic Inferno trait. I'm not a huge fan of it actually applying Immolate. I wish it was back to the way it was before with the Incinerate charge for a few reasons. Overlapping Immolates outside of Pandemic and things, if you end up taking it at some point. But for the most part, I've just played Flash over Entropy when it comes to Mythic Plus, regardless. Second row here, not much has really changed. Shadowburn has received some change, I suppose. It is a 2-stack ability now. It crits on targets below 20% health, but it's just too narrow, I still feel at this point. If it was a baseline ability, it would feel a lot better, but it's just a bit too narrow, I feel. So for the most part, I've stuck with Soulfire and Flashover. 35 row, Inferno, Fire and Brimstone, or Cataclysm. I think Cat is still going to be your single target play here, I think. That could change a bit, but for the most part, outside of that, we'll look at the Rain of Chaos build here in a second. We've played with Fire and Brimstone a decent bit on beta. Number one, mainly due to the Decimating Bolt Incinerate damage amp. We don't have that in pre-patch, but we do still have access to Inferno. And you'll see in a second here with how many Rain of Fires we're casting, this is a really, really strong effect. 45 row, Roaring Blaze has been changed. Conflict rate increases your Immolate, Incinerate, and Conflict rate damage to target by 30%. Now, if this is basically an increase to fire spells. It does not increase Chaos Bolt, it does not increase Cataclysm, it does not increase Shadowburn. If I change to Channel Demon Fire here, though, you'll see that it does indeed add Channel Demon Fire to the tooltip. So it's basically a whitelisted and blacklisted set of spells. I wish it did affect Chaos Bolt, but in the end, because it is fire damage, it's sort of chaos damage, but it is what it is. The big build you've seen on beta, and I guess if you watch any PTR keys, revolve around Reign of Chaos, however, and really Soul Conduit. Reign of Chaos has replaced Supremacy, and it says, while your Infernal is active, every soul shard you spend has a 20% chance to summon an additional Infernal that lasts 10 seconds. So, it's sort of like Vision of Perfection on a talent here, and obviously people don't love VOP. Well, people love VOP in a sense. The Shaman's popping off, man. People like VOP, but they don't like the RNG that it brings, and that RNG is increased by an extreme on live right now, with Grimoire Supremacy being a thing, proccing an Infernal during your main Infernal, giving you extended Supremacy at 20 stacks. It just gets out of control. Reign of Chaos has bad luck protection built in. Now, we don't know the deck numbers or whatever they've set it for, I guess, with it as far as that goes, but it has bad luck protection built in. And let's be real here, whenever you're casting a Chaos Bolt, that's 2 shards. 20% chance is a decent bit. You're using 2 shards, so when you're casting Rain of Fire, it's a 20% chance, essentially 3 times. I've had 2 Infernals proc off of a Rain of Fire. I've had 3 Infernals proc off a Rain of Fire at once. I believe it was due to a VOP proc off the spellcast and 2 off the shards being consumed, but this build gets incredibly... It's so out of hand when you're playing Reign of Chaos, especially with having Memory of Lucid Dreams as a minor. The shard gen you get in a Reign of Chaos window is already insane. And if you... Reign of Chaos with Lucid, with Soul Conduit, it's just incredible when you're casting Rain of Fire. It's just chaining 1 rain, 2 rain, 3 rains, 4 rains. Having VOP Major also procs you an Infernal, and whenever you cast a spell, that Infernal gives you a full 30-second Reign of Chaos window. Let's see what we can do with this build. Once again, playing Flashover, Entropy, Inferno, Reign of Chaos, and Soul Conduit with VOP Major, Lucid Minor, and 2, I guess, semi-irrelevant Azerite traits or essences. Let's do this. Let's go hands up, boys. Hands up. We should probably roll. We'll roll some immolates here too, just for a little bit of flashpoint up time. Being real, the font buff doesn't matter a whole lot. We're just showing it here. So Infernal, Berserking, Rain of Fire. Oh, we had an Infernal proc. Oh, look at my shards here. 1 Rain of Fire, 2 Rain of Fire. Throw an Incinerate in, 3 Rain of Fire. Love the proc and Infernal today. Any time now. There's 1. There's 1. Any day. There's 2. There's 3. And basically, at this point, you're just almost casting Rain of Fire, like solely. I'll roll an Immolate, maybe 1, maybe 2. There's a VOP proc. Look at our Supremacy. Or our Rain of Chaos is back to a full 30 seconds. Oh, did it proc again right there, actually? It just keeps happening over and over and over. The more Infernos you chain with Lucid, with Soul Conduit, with the random refunds, like, you're just casting Rain of Fire over and over. And with having a 2-minute Inferno on live now, in VOP Minor or Major, whatever you're playing, with Crashing Chaos, it's just so insane. The damage you deal is just incredible. It's almost uncomparable. Now, obviously, Vision of Perfection procking you a full 30 seconds of Reign of Chaos seems pretty strong. There are probably 2 ways they can take that. One being that they just give you a full, like a 10-second Reign of Chaos window, which corresponds to how long the actual Infernal is. And that's basically the extension you get the Supremacy on live right now before pre-patch hits. Or number 2, they could just totally remove the Reign of Chaos part proccing with VOP. So just in case that happens, I did want to show you guys a bit here what Memory of Lucid Dreams Major looks like with an Infernal basically every 2 minutes. So I'm not going to font here. It's on CD. I don't really care. We'll just get our immos rolling, drop an Infernal, and just go. We'll go there. I'll pop Lucid now. Why not? Pop a Rain of Fire. There's 1. There's 2 rains. There's 3 rains. We're going to do a Havoc just so we get some charge. 4 rains. 5 rains. 6 rains. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16! 16 straight Rain of Fire cast. I thought I hit like 8 or 9. I quite literally cast 16 Rain of Fires in a row there. The shard generation you get with Memory of Lucid Dreams and having an Infernal rolling. Oh, 2 Infernals, 3 Infernals, 4. Multiple Infernals with Reign of Chaos is just incredible. Whether VOP goes live working as a major like that or not, the good thing is, hey, Lucid Dreams is a pretty good backup, and honestly, depending on what you're doing, it might even be better than VOP. Having that damage profile every 2 minutes, I can guarantee no spec in the game will compete with you right there. That damage, look at this breakdown. 80% of our damage in 2 spells, and just incredible, just unbeatable. Thanks for watching, dudes. I hope this video gave you guys a better understanding, look at how Warlock looks in pre-patch heading into Shadowlands. Now, like I said, a lot of the Affliction Azerite traits are hopefully going to be changed, and that's one of the reasons why I'm holding off making the spec guides for pre-patch. If Cascading Calamity and especially ID are fixed to work with the new Affliction and the new talents and Azerite, things might get pretty out of hand. But at this point, with having some of our main Azerite traits just not working, I'm curious to see where things end up. Demonology is still looking fine. There are some spicy changes. The demonic consumption builds are looking better, I feel, with explosive potential still being around and things like that. And holy cow, that destruction build with 16 random fire casts in a row is actually going to be insane. I am excited to blast some keys in BFA. I haven't said that in a while. In pre-patch. So once again, any weak auras, profiles, add-ons you see here are available to you for free on my Twitch. If you want to swing by, grab them, drop a follow, hang out, ask any questions anytime. Let me know what you guys think of these builds, just how Warlock looks in pre-patch in the comment section below. I'm super curious to hear. Now, I did say in the video that Destro is a bit old to me. I mean, not old, but it's been in a similar form for a while. But I can tell you, until you've played with Reign of Chaos, whether you're playing Lucid Major or not, with Rain of Fire spam and all this, you have no idea. This build is so much fun. If you haven't jumped on PTR, I would encourage you to do so and give it a shot. Thanks again for watching, dudes. If you want to see more WoW content, be sure to smash the subscribe button below. Helps out a lot. And I'll catch you guys again soon on stream. Peace.